Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome all to the Ordinary Council meeting for 5th of May 2020. I will say this at this point, with the new regulations and live screening of council meetings, if we get a break in transmission, we will stop the meeting until the transmission is back up and running again, and then resume the meeting. So if we stop, we will restart and we won't be off camera while that happens. Over to you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Audio is captured from the entire room and video is focused from Councillor Forsyth through to Councillor Pearce. By speaking at any time during the meeting, you consent to your voice and any comments you make being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and questions on agenda items will not be recorded in the written minutes. The reason for recording meetings is to hold us more accountable to our community, having as accurate a record of meeting as possible, and also to improve transparency on decision making for those that are unable to attend in person, which in this case, everyone. The full meeting is being streamed live on Council's YouTube channel, Alpine Shire Council, and a recording will also be available at the same location after the meeting. The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are now on. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, Ordinary Council meeting 7th of April 2020. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Janus and Councillor Knapstein. All those in favour? Carried. Apologies, of which I think we have none. Obituaries and congratulations. From my left, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Nicholas?
Yep, I'd like to congratulate all those hard-working teachers across Australia, but particularly from Bright P12, because that's what I see. I can't believe how effectively they're delivering the school program, and I know it's a huge step up for many, many of them, and it's fantastic. Well done, everybody.
I gather, and Councillor Keeble will back me up, I think is it 4 times harder to deliver via, as opposed to face-to-face?
That sounds good. Teaching's a hard gig regardless.
Councillor Janus?
Nothing from me, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Knapstein?
Yes, I'd just like to mention Constables Joshua Presney, Glenn Humphries, Senior Constable Kevin King, and Leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, and then sadly later in South Australia, Detective Chief Superintendent Joanne Shanahan. It's just a tragedy when these lives are lost on the road. Shouldn't happen.
Yes. Councillor Forsyth.
I'd just like to add to Councillor Nicholas's thank yous, and I'll include all of those health workers around Victoria.
What about all the first responders? It was probably... Yeah, exactly. Yep. Councillor Keeble.
Beauty turned to 90 today, and Brian Winowski turned 90. He was the founding director of Bogong School Camp and has been a long time supporter of education in the area, so happy birthday.
Oh, I concur. Happy birthday, Brian. Up to you now.
I'm back in.
Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thank you. I concur with Councillor Knapstein on the loss of the 4 police people down on the Eastern Freeway in Melbourne. Shocking incident, and you feel for all of them and all their families, but I'd also like to congratulate the local police from Mount Beauty, from Myrtleford, from Bright, and the great job they've done over the last couple of months with their discretion and with the different way of policing, and to know a few of them, like it's just amazing the great job that they've done around our local towns in our shire. Thank you. We done? Yeah. Well,
okay. Declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. Do we have any? None. Public questions, of which we have one from Kate Barrell. This refers to an item later in the agenda. Mr. Jeremy, can you inform me of how much the community grant, or the grant was for the new netball courts in Myrtleford in 2016?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council received grant funding of $1.3 million from the state government's Better Indoor Stadiums Fund towards the $2.6 million budgeted cost of the expansion of the Myrtleford Indoor Sports Stadium.
And I don't think we can actually answer question 2 because we actually haven't even voted on the subject yet. So that will become more clear when we get to the agenda item later in the agenda. Well, I'm not inclined to read the question out because it's implying that we've taken part in a process that we haven't actually taken part in yet. If we'd voted on it and we're all in agreement, then I would read the question. But the question predisposes that we're going to vote in favour of the motion. So I don't think it's appropriate. Presentation of reports by officers. 8.1, Chief Executive Officer Charlie Bird.
It's recommended that the contracts approved by the CO be noted, which is one here for the supply and delivery of one new truck with a factory tipper.
Yeah, I second that.
Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Pearce?
Yes, yeah, Darryl.
Daryl. Councillor Nicholas.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Pearce.
Look, I think we discussed what model it was, I think, last time. I think we've all forgotten, but what we did work out that we put our trust in our people down the yard, Dale, in the one in this instance, and if Dale buys something, I believe it's okay. Thanks.
Any further comment? To the vote, all those in favour? Carried. 8.2, Director of Assets, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to inform Council and to provide a response to a petition tabled at the April 2020 Council meeting in relation to a request for a new 50-metre swimming pool with a retractable roof in Bright. The existing Bright Sports Centre contains an indoor 17-metre long heated pool, which, although currently closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is typically open year-round. In addition to ad hoc use by members of the public, the pool is available for aqua aerobics and hydrotherapy classes, learn to swim programs, and for hire for parties and events. Bright also contains a river pool and splash park at the confluence of the Ovens River and Morses Creek. This river pool is supervised during the peak summer holiday period and is a popular destination for locals and for visitors to Bright. A petition was received by Council on the 13th of March 2020 and it was tabled at the April 2020 Council meeting. The petition contains 443 signatures and formally requests Council to formulate a 5 to 10 year plan for the construction of a swimming pool with retractable roof in Bright. 10 letters of support were also provided by the proponent, which were received from local schools, sporting organisations and individuals. Across the Shire, many of our existing sport and recreation facilities are ageing and are in need of renewal or replacement, and demand for different facilities is also changing. On this basis, Council has sought funding to enable the preparation of a Shire-wide sport and active recreation plan. The plan will address the following items in consultation with the community: an assessment of the Shire's existing sport and recreation facilities, their condition and their location, a gap analysis of the current and predicted demand for existing and future facilities, where gaps are identified through this analysis, a feasibility assessment of alternative facility development options to deliver the best value and benefits to our communities, high-level scoping and costing for any recommended new or upgraded facilities, and a recommended priority list and a time frame for project implementation.
So moved.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Nicholas.
I'd just like to commend the community member and members who have put this together. Looking for a pool in Bright has been going on for as long as I've been living in Wandillagong, which is, I think 23 years this year, so there's been a long time, a lot of people thinking about it. I think the way forward is the right way to go, to look at what we need across the Shire and see if we can prioritise how it is. And can I invite Councillor Keeble to talk to this as well?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that there are some other ways to fund it other than federal grants potentially, and that Councillor Keeble has found those ideas.
Yeah, there's other ways, Councillor Nichols, and I would imagine with the document that's going to be put together, we might put some of those thoughts in there, but some of them are in regards to shires in general providing land, and then other companies perhaps bidding for a pool, say, for want of a better term. So there's different ways of doing it.
Yeah, so I just would encourage those proponents of the pool to keep working on it and keep watching that space.
I apologise for the change in procedure. Councillor Pearce,
Yeah.
I accept it, that's okay.
if you'd like to add any further.
Yeah, I was just thinking, a few years back, 14 years ago, which is way back to Sarah, I can remember Wangaratta were building a new pool. I think I was the mayor at the time and went down there with former CEO Ian Nichols and had a look at the costs and all the challenges ahead for the Wangaratta people, and they were big. And on top of that, we also went down to what's it down by the seaside? Did I write it down?
Port Fairy.
Port Fairy, that'll be good. Port Fairy, they had a private group down there that banded together and in fact, and planned to build their own pool down there. And I think the cost, this is 15 years ago, was probably around 3.5 million, which sounds pretty cheap these days. But they succeeded down there. They built a pool, an indoor pool, 50 metres, and did a great job, and that not many could do, so it's doable for any of these groups to build it by themselves or bring us in board, but these days I guess we're talking upwards of 15 million just as a grab, and it's a big task. But the other thing is, the pools we've got in all the three towns, they're 33 metres, and the one we've got in Bright, it's only short, and it's not in great condition. So it's a good approach to work towards getting a 50-metre pool built in Bright, and I'd say good luck.
Any further comment? Councillor Janus?
Just as an indicative cost, Mr. Jeremy, what would something like this cost? Well, I think we mentioned 15 plus million. That's 15 sort of roughly just for the pool, and then there's the roof and other bits and pieces. What, another 4 or 5 million on that?
Thank you, Councillor Janus. We've not done any detailed scoping of this project.
I realise that, yep.
It's difficult to say at this stage, but indicatively upwards of 15 million for a 50-metre outdoor pool without a roof, and then you might be talking up to potentially 4 or 5 million for the retractable roof, depending on what you designed and what the requirements were.
Thank you. It just puts it into some context for myself and others, no doubt. And just for your information, Councillor Pearce, Wangaratta's budget is around about $61 million a year. 3-year average.
Councillor Napstein?
I remember there was a very strong push for similar in Mount Beauty. I'd be really interested to compare the costing of that and why that got rejected. This was in Dave Barry's day. I remember we went for the meeting there. It would be really interesting. Is it relevant to have a look at the same? Peter?
We've got a long way to go on this topic for starters. Mr. Jeremy's outlining his project and his agenda item. We don't even have a site for the pool. We haven't done the rec study on where we should put it. There's a lot of water to flow underneath the bridge. I think it's on in the project pipeline as 15 years down the track. beyond 2033, so it's 13 years away currently.
It's not really that far away when you think we've just been talking about 15 and 22 years ago.
It's a beyond 2033, doesn't
Yeah,
state
correct.
23.
I
so
know
it's
that.
at
It's
least
13 years away currently at this place. So at that point, so we're actually having dialogue about what it actually looks like.
Yep.
The community have actually written and what we're doing is responding to their petition by putting it on the project list, and now with the back behind the scenes work begins to see what it actually looks like.
Okay. I just think UKVCA might be interested in the process.
Any further questions, or otherwise we might go to the vote? All those in favour? Carried. Mr Jeremy, before we move on, we might go to the second part of Ms Barrell's question. Would council be willing to lobby the federal government to obtain a grant in support of a project for a 50-metre pool for Bright?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we've outlined in our report, Council is planning to deliver the Alpine Active Sport and Recreation Plan, which is the first step in determining the feasibility of a 50-metre swimming pool in Bright. So Council won't seek external funding until that plan's been completed and until we understand what the priorities are for our upgrade and new recreational facilities across the Shire. What's also worth noting, relating back to the question, is the existing pools in Murford and Mount Beauty, they were constructed in the 1960s, and the concrete pool shells, they're nearing the end of their useful life. So as part of this study, not only will we look at the Bright pool, we'll also have to look at the aquatic facilities that we've got in Mount Beauty and Murford at the same time.
Thank you very much, Mr Jeremy, and it sounds like the review of our sporting precincts and what's required from our community going forward is very timely. 8.2.2, Alpine View Children's Centre upgrade.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. An opportunity exists for Council to seek external funding to upgrade the Alpine View Children's Centre to alleviate the current capacity constraints and to support the delivery of funded 3-year-old kindergarten. This report seeks Council's financial commitment to the project. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Alpine View Children's Centre in Bright was experiencing demand for kindergarten and childcare places that exceeded the centre's capacity, which has resulted in some families either missing out on care completely or needing to travel to other areas to access childcare. In 2021, funded 3-year-old kindergarten will be introduced in the Alpine Shire under government direction, which is anticipated to exacerbate the capacity issues once the services return to normal. The Paul Bunker Children's Centre feasibility study project is currently being finalised. The conclusion of this study is that the current and the forecast increase in demand is insufficient to justify expenditure on a new purpose-built centre in Paul Bunker at this time. However, upgrading the Alpine View Children's Centre in Bright could meet the demand for childcare in the Upper Vale for the next 10 years. An upgrade to the Alpine View Children's Centre is proposed in 2 stages. Stage 1 works will increase the kindergarten capacity by 14 places, as well as alleviating the current waitlist for the under 3-year-old children through providing an additional 12 places. And following this, the Stage 2 works will increase capacity by a further 16 places.
So moved.
Councillor Nicholas.
Second.
Councillor Pearce. Busy this evening.
On fire.
Councillor Nicholas.
I'd like to start with a question. So the upgrade is intended to cater for childcare needs for the next 10 years as they increase. Does that take into account any large subdivisions that might lead to significant population increases or steps?
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. As part of the study, we've looked as far ahead as we know, so we haven't taken into account what might come out of the land development strategy, but we have looked at what existing land is available for subdivision, for residential subdivision, which includes the large potential subdivision on the outskirts of Bright. So that's factored in, but we don't know yet what might come out of a future land development strategy.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Well, I guess I'd start with saying that, to have a town, really the first thing you need is a school. And I suppose kindergarten is the preschool before the school. And I guess it's already crowded up there, as most kindergartens occur. I'm looking at you, Tony, with a nod or something. So for $540,000 job with 160 from us, it doesn't seem that big a deal, and it's good for our community.
Any further questions? Councillor Keeble.
Thank thanks for that. So it's 26 new places for stage 1, and with the change in 3-year-old kindergarten, that's now 15 years, this is happening all around the country, where early childhood centres are having to expand if they were already at capacity. So, you know, this is why these grants are out there for communities to get. Our community is really lucky in that we have Alpine Children's Services and Alpine Children's Shire. They work together to get these grants and build these facilities for our families and kids, basically. So I think it's great that we can do that, get the grants. My question, I will say thanks to the Bright P12 Council who have been part of the conversation, and we know that that's on their land, so we thank them for the conversation that they've had with Alpine Children's Services, because without their blessings, if you like, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing, so that's terrific. My questions are, it's 540,000 is the estimated cost. We're asking for a grant that much. We're putting in 160. Do we have any clarity around about the grant in regards to 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 funding?
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. The grant funding guidelines did not specify how much of a co-contribution was required. However, they did specify an expectation that there would be a co-contribution. So how we have determined the split between council funds and the funds we're applying for is that there's the maximum amount that you can apply for under this grant funding is 600,000, but that's aligned to a very specific increase in the number of kindergarten spaces, which our upgrade doesn't provide. So we've applied for proportionally less based on the number of spaces that we are able to provide through the upgrade, and the rest we've put in as a council contribution.
That sounds good.
Councillor Jennings? Oh, sorry, Tony, did I cut you
I
off?
was just going to have to say, let's hope that the VSBA comes through with our application.
Okay.
Sure, it'll be a great application.
Councillor Jennings?
Thank you. Certainly a positive recommendation here, and it's good to see that Alpine Shire is working in partnership with Children's Services. But how much room have we got left up there to build onto any further from now? Because having looked at some of the report, it was a demountable or something similar was going to be attached to that. If we grow further, how much room have we got left beyond that to expand down the track, or are we going to have to look back at Paul Punker or somewhere else at that point in time? Maybe Councillor Keeble, yes.
So the land that we're talking about is deep land that it's currently on, and so there's a bit of land there. However, it's under the control, if you like, of the Bright P12 Council. So it's really at the holding of the negotiations between Alpine Children's Services, Alpine Council, and the Bright P12. So there is land for more extension. The actual two demountables, well, they're not the portables that you and I may have been in, but they're good looking buildings. There's land on the current parcel for both those buildings, but after that there'd have to be some more negotiations if there was going to be big because then it'll be off the parcel.
Will that take it away from the school children now?
No. The current site where it is an area where the children from Bright P12 do not have their play breaks in, but it's land that the Bright P12 have and have used in the past.
So tether animals there now?
Yeah, animals growing
Okay.
fruit trees or whatever.
Thank you. I'm just trying to think to the future rather than...
Yeah. It's possible, but it would be negotiated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Forsyth.
Very simple question, Mr. Jeremy. The 160,000, is that into the 2021 budget at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. We only put projects into our budget when we have secured funding, so at this stage this isn't in the project budget for next year, the draft budget.
Right. Would the building be theoretically done in the next 12 months?
If we secure funding, then my understanding
Okay.
So the project would be, it would probably straddle the 2021-22 and the following financial year. I imagine we would have it finished by Christmas 2021. That would be my expectation.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
To the vote, or write a reply? To the vote, all those in favour? Carried. 8.2.3, elevated work platform.
And undertake tree maintenance works as well as...
Yeah, so moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillors Janus and Nicholas. Councillor Janus?
It's simply a matter of OH&S for our valued staff to ensure that they have the proper equipment to do their task, and reading the report, our current equipment is aged and probably no longer suitable for what it's required. So we've got to look after our staff correctly. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas?
Not only that, I'm looking forward to seeing it in action.
Any further comment before we go to the vote?
Solves the bunya pine cone problem.
No, it doesn't. No, they need a bigger one for that.
I think we're done with the conversation. To the vote. Now we've got something to tow behind the tip truck we just purchased. Yeah, exactly. So what are we up to? 8.2.5, is it? 8.3, Director of Corp... No. 8.2.4, Asset Management Policy. Sorry, my mistake. Councillor Forsyth? Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Forsyth.
This is one of the policies that came up for discussion in the Audit Committee at one point in time. I think that the fact that you've now got a proper asset management crew in place and trying to then sort out where all the assets are, and I believe they're in different databases. If you can get them all combined into one and we get one source of truth for our assets, which is really quite important. So, good policy.
Councillor Nicholas.
I just wanted to commend the team for thinking ahead and putting in things like the whole of lifestyle concept into the asset management program. It's really important as the circular economy becomes part of the way we do business. Well done.
Any further? To the vote, all those in favour? Carried. 8.3, Director Corporate, Natalie Cook. 8.3.1, Waste Wise Events. Councillor Keeble, Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Keeble that this is a beginning, and once this is being well implemented and documented, then there's a chance to step up to greater things. But I wanted to commend again the staff who put this together, because of the community consultation as part of its development, and the sending out a draft to the event organisers to ask for their comments, because I think that'll always help something get traction and be more readily implemented. So well done. It's a great guide, by the way.
Councillor Napstein.
Through the chair, I've just got a question about the, given the COVID and the ban of single-use plastic, or no, they're bringing back in single-use plastics. How much of a setback is that going to be to this? Thanks.
Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is certainly a timely policy that's come before us, and it's something that the community has a high expectation for. Talking to any of the land group areas or groups in our shire, this is something that they fully support, I understand, and have been waiting for. These guidelines are needed, because when you do go to some of our bigger events, or any event, you just have a look around at the bins that are incorrectly used, and we are expecting that we will be having an increase in fees in our landfill charges. That is going to put another impost upon the ratepayer. So if we can avoid landfill, that's going to assist us in many ways. But I suppose the overarching thing is it is going to assist the environment, and people come to our area for visiting for the beautiful environment that we can offer. And part of that, looking after that environment, is looking after our rubbish. So I certainly commend the report and certainly support it. So it is a bit more work for some of the volunteers, which are predominantly who run our events, but we'll get over that and just make it better. And that's certainly in some of our other neighbouring shires. This has been a success, and I also understand that there is some budgetary items in there that's not necessarily mentioned in this report, but for the dish pig trailer, which is a great thing for us to be doing, and brings us into line with some of our other events. So thank you, Ms Cook, for the report, and I support it.
Right, a reply?
Well, it's just to add to Councillor Janus, it's not just the disc pig trailer, it's also a water trailer. It'd be fabulous, yeah.
Yes, Ms Cook. To the vote we go. All those in favour? Carried. No brainer. 8.3.2 Audit Committee meeting, 28th of February. Councillor Forsyth.
Second.
Councillor Keeble. Councillor Forsyth.
As the recommendation is, this is just basically receiving and noting the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting. If you go into the actual, if you've got a general public to have that available, probably not. No, it's just basically noting anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Keeble, no? I presume there's no further questions? To the vote, all those in favour? Carried. Assembly of Councillors, recommendation the summary of the Assemblies of Councillors for April 2020 be received. Can I move and a seconder, please? Councillor Pearce, Councillor Janus, all those in favour? Carried. General business, starting from my left, Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I'll keep it.
I'll keep it brief, Mr Mayor. I'm Johnny Backham, if you're listening out there. Still pushing it and still working hard to get a bridge in Harriettville that's been affected by fires and other things over the years, and still working on it, John, and in conjunction with the Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Nothing.
Councillor Janus.
Just a question for the CEO. Are we making application to the government for the Working for Victoria scheme to assist us in after the bushfires and after this COVID-19 to get some of these, perhaps some of these smaller tasks completed?
Yes, Councillor Janus, we have been in discussions with the Victorian Government about the $500 million Working for Victoria scheme. We've had a number of discussions, put through a recent application which we expect to hear before the end of May, which in turn would lead to a number of people which can undertake a range of tasks, both indoor and outdoor tasks. So it's a good initiative, and if successful, our workforce will expand considerably over a 6-month time frame.
Is that so? We'd be looking predominantly at local people for their tasks, for their jobs.
So people need to be eligible for it. They need to apply through Sidekicker, and I believe it makes sense. My expectation would be local staff, but they need to have it. They need to have signed up through Sidekicker to be eligible to apply for those roles.
Yeah, great. It's terrific. It'll be good for our communities. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Councillor Napstein.
Good on you, Darryl. I spoke with John Buckham about 50 minutes ago, and I just said, what is the issue with the bridge? Concurs with that, and I was going to ask if just some correspondence could go out to him. I've got his email address, just to say when, where and how it's likely to be done, and then that saves it coming up time and again, because he said he hadn't heard from you for a while, so I'd be pleased to hear that. Don't know what the new normal's going to look like, but the possibility is that tourism and hospitality, yes, we want to get it back up and running, but we don't know what it's going to look like. Nobody does. There will be some rules around that. Local tourism might benefit. I was just talking to someone earlier today with that bubble that is being done between New Zealand and Australia. We could well benefit from local tourism, and it's apparently it was tried again in 1943, but the US stepped in and kind of fouled that one, but I'll find out the history of that. There's some good things that can come of this COVID and the results of that, because we can incorporate with the new changes. I'm sure we can take in climate change and environmental concerns. It's a good opportunity to unfold that with the increase in tourism and manage the numbers of that better. That's just my observation, but as I said, nobody knows what it's going to look like. So hang in there, everyone, and stay home.
Councillor Forsyth.
Just one thing and a point of clarity, really, and that's to do with the Assembly of Councillors, because my understanding of this is that we meet in person as for briefing sessions and yet I think for us to say the Assembly of Councillors is just briefing session, whether we should actually be saying briefing sessions via Zoom, because I don't believe Zoom was actually put in place until after these meetings. Oh, sorry. I don't believe that Victoria allowed councils to meet via electronic means until after these meetings had been held.
Couldn't we meet already for briefing? We could still do briefings.
I'll defer to the CEO on this one because he's had more comment than commentary.
Very good question, Councillor Forsyth. You're correct. The omnibus legislation came into effect from the 1st of May. So these briefing sessions were held prior to that. Under the legislation, prior to the omnibus legislation, our council meetings were required to meet in person, and also committees of council as well. I don't believe there's a requirement for briefing sessions. However, I'd like to take that one on notice, and I think at the very least we can provide clarification in the minutes that it was undertaken by Zoom, regardless of what the legislative requirements are.
Okay, so let's let the minutes reflect that the briefing sessions that were carried out by Zoom be modified, and we'll sign off those as appropriate at the next council meeting. Thank you for the pick-up, Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Keeble.
Yes, well done. Question to the CEO, just for the people out in the big wide world there and for us as well, just an update on the fire recovery, what's going on and where we're at and how that's all happening in 30 seconds.
Bushfires seem like such a long time ago, but really wasn't that long ago at all. We have been progressing through bushfire recovery. We have a team here. We have a manager of bushfire recovery, which has a number of people working within their team. We've been actively working with Bushfire Recovery Victoria, and we will have a bushfire recovery hub set up here in Bright. I believe that's how many weeks away, Mr. Jeremy? 4 weeks?
Before the end of May.
Before the end of May. So by the end of this month, that'll be in place, which is fantastic. If it had been open now, its use would be limited under the current restrictions. So I think that's timing feels about right. We'll have to wait and see how things unfold. We've also received the expression of interest for the Community Recovery Committee, where we've sought expression of interest across 7 communities across Alpine Shire and Mount Hotham and Falls Creek. They came in last Friday, and we are just working through those applications at the moment. And so we've had a great strong interest, and we've got coverage across all those communities, which is excellent, and we'll work through those. Anything more to add,
That's
Mr.
7 members? Was that 7 positions or was it open?
So there were 2 from each of the 7 locations, or areas we'll call them. So 5 within Alpine Shire, so Myrtleford, Bright, Mount Beauty, Harriedville and Dinner Plain, and in addition Mount Hotham and Falls Creek. We've got as a collective.
Thanks for that. And I noticed in one of the larger papers today that Alpine Shire is the 3rd highest, the town with the 3rd most decrease in GDP. I think that's what it was there, after Gippsland and Towong. And so I just wanted to say to all the people out there, like the Shire here, the council, the workers, councillors, they're working really hard behind the scenes. And there's lots of things that are available to our ratepayers and communities and to small businesses. So make sure you find out what's needed for you. And if you need assistance with paying for Shire rates or anything to do that, make sure you call Shire up, and I'm sure they'll be more than helpful to assist you.
Can I just add to that one?
Mr. Bird.
Councillor Keeble, one of the larger papers, just define that.
Well, I don't want to promote that paper.
You don't have to name it, but what does it mean by one of the bigger business, not size of paper?
Well,
One of them statewide.
Well, a big paper used to be The Age and the small paper used to be The Sun. And one of the larger papers, I'm confused.
I think it's circulation. Fair enough.
Mr. Bird.
Thank you. So very good point there around what's available. There's a lot of grants available to impacted businesses and community members. One of the grants, the $10,000 grants for the impacted businesses has been a very low uptake in Victoria, and up until recently there'd only been 16 applications from the Alpine Shire. When we became aware of this, we strongly promoted that amongst our networks and through other medium. And I think we've now had over 150 applications, and we keep pushing that. So again, just a message to everyone out there to apply for that funding. There's a lot of businesses which are eligible for that. It takes a few steps, but $10,000 will help many businesses.
No more general business. Item 11, motions to which notice has previously been given. There's none. Reception, reading of petitions, which is none. We go to item 13, which is documents for sealing.
Also move.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Knapstein, all those in
I had a
favour?
question though, just quickly.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Pearce.
Just that one of the items on the signings, the toilets up across on the creek down the road there. They've started building there already. I just wonder why we're signing things now. The toilet construction.
Very good question, Councillor Pearce. So a contract becomes valid once council has endorsed that at a council meeting. In terms of exchanging contracts and documentation, that happens after that. So we won't. So then the contract documentation is exchanged and signatures, and it comes back to council for the final signature. So that can happen after the work start. But it's important, if we were to wait every time for that, that would delay capital works even longer. And given the short season we have before things get wet, it's important they got onto it.
Accepted. Thank you.
And so we need to go to the vote on that. All those in favour? Carried. And that brings us to the end of the meeting.
Who seconded that?
Kitty did. Yeah, so you and Kitty. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. I would just like to congratulate our communities on staying safe, staying indoors, and heeding the advice of the Chief Medical Officer and the Premier. And the sooner we, well, I think we've got a little bit further to go yet, and we wait to hear what is to be announced next week. But for those that are thinking about busting out, please don't. Please, as Kitty has suggested, Councillor Knapstein, stay home. So it's not much longer, and I don't want to see deaths in the Alpine Shire from COVID-19.
We're going pretty good.
We are. We're going very well. So the time is 4:50, officially closed. Thank you. Switch it off, please.